Hi, my name is Ashley Vargo, and the title of my project is Keeping One's Eye on the Prize, the Importance of Data Collection and State Requirements. You can reach me at avargo2@ashland.edu for any information that you'd like regarding this project or any questions that you may have. The statement of need regarding my project is from the provision made to Senate Bill 316, which requires students to undergo a comprehensive eye exam either prior to or shortly after implementation of an IEP. It also requires ODE to collect and report data about the implementation of this law. In the spring of 2014, EMIS began collecting data from districts who serve students with special needs. Prior to this, it was not required to send data to EMIS, therefore not all districts reported their findings. Since many districts did not report their findings for the 2012-13 school year, data from this school year is only based on a 45% response rate, which was approximately 13,000 students. Based on the data provided by districts, only 15% of parents of children with initial IEPs reported that their child received a follow-up comprehensive eye exam. Data from the 13-14 school year was based on approximately 27,000 students, where 35% of parents indicated a follow-up eye exam was completed, although 28.2% of districts indicated that they did not know why students who were initially identified as having a disability did not receive an eye exam. Data from Norton City Schools, where I'm a school psychologist, was included for the 2014 school year. However, data was only based from September to December. There were 20 students that were included in the data set. However, data was only included for 12 of them, or could be accounted for 12 of the students. Down here, I included the number of students and their correlation as to why they did not receive an eye exam. So you can see here, for example, 2 students did not because they had recently completed a visit with their pediatrician and had a checkup. This information was gained through the tracking eye exam form that was provided from the Director of Student Services. And here's just an example. The date notified of the eye exam, you can see here, again, data is only from September through December of 14. Parents indicated that they will, so there are some notes indicated in this column. Parents indicated that they will not. These numbers correlate with the reasons down here and the key provided, and then the last column is the date initial services began, which should have correlated with the EMIS information. As you can see here, there's many gaps in this data collection method, and likely the data is inaccurate due to that. Data from Norton Schools for the 15-16 school year included 29 students. However, data was only accounted for 23 of those students. Again, you can read across here 2 students and the category in which, for instance, 2 students received an eye exam within 9 months immediately prior to being identified with disabilities, and so forth. This information was gained through the actual form that is sent to EMIS at the end of the school year. I apologize because it is small, but you read these categories right here, and then you list the number of students. Again, you can see here that there's a lot of data missing from this, which again would not be an accurate representation of the students who either received the eye exam or students who did not, and the reasons as to why they did not. And again, all of this information is representing your district when this information is sent to EMIS. The project description: due to these problems that I see, I created a Google Sheet form. Information is included from the student, and I'll show you this in a second. And I also created a second form as to the reasons why an eye exam may not have been completed for the student. This document will be made available to our Director of Student Services, the building administrators, as well as the intervention specialists. And that data is included right here. So here's the form that I created. Here are the headings up here. As I'm completing this, I just wanted to let you know as well that much of this information I already have to complete as part of the evaluation process, as well as intervention specialists will have all of this information during the IEP process as well. So what would happen is you would just enter a student's name that I'm evaluating. I would enter their student ID, the date that the student was identified, which is going to be the ETR meeting, if the team found that the child was eligible for an IEP. So we'll just mark that as October. The eye exam due date, and we'll make that 4. The eye exam due date is going to come from approximately 1 month after the IEP meeting was. So based on the date that the student was identified, we would have 30 calendar days to have the IEP meeting, and then we'd give the family another 30 days to have the eye exam completed. So it really should be 12 15 of 16, approximately 2 months after the student is identified. Date and who contacted the parent. So let's say they scheduled the IEP meeting on 11/5/16 and Mrs. S let the parents know that the eye exam needed to be completed, and the parent said that the eye exam will not be completed. If the result of the communication may say that the eye exam is not going to be completed, we can click on sheet 2, excuse me, with different reasons why it would not be completed. For instance, number 1 is parental refusal, 2 is hospitalization, 3 is lack of resources. I also color coordinated all of the reasons why, so it would be easier to read and easier to collect the data. So let's say that student's parents, said there's no parental concerns with vision, that's why we're not going to have one done. You would go back to sheet 1 and include reason number 4, and then you would color that in green. So it's easier to see how many greens you have versus the number. I also created a Google Calendar. As a traveling employee, I have a large caseload, and I work with many students as well as many different intervention specialists and building principals from different buildings. So this form will also help with collecting our data. So I went through already and indicated the last day of our grading periods, which we have 4 grading periods, and those are going to be in red. This calendar will quickly fill up as a year progresses with student ETR dates, with student IEP dates, when parents were contacted, when they weren't. So for instance, let's say the parent was contacted on Tuesday the 11th. We'll just put student initials. So we would put AB, parent contacted, eye exam completed. You would create that. I'm also going to color coordinate the 3 different elementaries that I'm at. So let's say this student was at primary elementary. We will make that yellow. I'll save. So then the intervention specialist at primary would know to look at the yellow indicators, and then they would be able to see AB and if that student was on their caseload. They will also be adding information, so they could be adding the information the same way. And this will go throughout the entire school year. The specific domains and understandings from the OAE that are included for this project is Domain 3, which is Systems for Capacity Building, Understanding number 6, Organizational Management and its use in creating positive and productive learning systems that promote the success of all student groups, as well as Domain 4, Resource Management and Educational Law, Understanding 9, the Fiscal and Material Resource Management and its use in creating efficient and effective learning systems that promote the success of all student groups, as well as Understanding 10, the Legal Dimensions of Educational Leadership. The specific objectives for my project is that 100% of the elementary students who are initially identified and are eligible for an IEP will be identified as either having an eye exam completed or at least identified with the reason as to why the eye exam was not completed by the end of the 2016-17 school year. Data will be collected throughout the school year but will be analyzed and measured at the end of each grading period. Measuring the objectives, I broke it down into the 4 grading periods that we have. So by the end of the first grading period, which is October 13th, and that's included in my calendar, 25% of all of the students identified as being eligible for an IEP will have either completed the eye exam or documentation as to why they have not, which means the parent has been contacted and we know why the eye exam is not being completed. By the end of the second grading period, which is December 20th of 2016, 50% of the students identified will either have had the eye exam and that's documented or the reasons as to why they have not. By the end of the third grading period, March 10th, 2017, 75% of all the students identified, again, will either have been recorded that they did have the eye exam completed or documentation as to why they have not. And by the end of the fourth grading period, which is May 25th, 100% of the students who are identified with an initial IEP will either have completed the eye exam or documentation as to why they have not. The timelines and benchmarks, the overall success and effectiveness of the project will not be made available until the end of the 16-17 school year, specifically after May 25th, which is the fourth grading period. On August 9th, which is Elementary Form Day, I plan to meet with our administrators to discuss this project implementation, make any changes they seem appropriate, and then schedule to meet with the intervention specialist on our Professional Development Day, which is October 17th. On October 15th is our Convocation Day, and I'll be presenting this data collection model to the intervention specialist at the elementary level. I'll demonstrate and review the Google Sheet forms as well as the Google Calendar and how to add information and document directly. I'll also encourage them to keep notes from the time of August 15th to October 17th with any pros and cons that they found while using the project. The date to be determined, I included this because throughout the school year I will be working with the intervention specialists for which students are identified, and we'll be going over things such as a Google Sheet form, the Google Calendar, and things like that. Specifically on October 13th, this is going to be the end of our first grading period where I'm going to be reviewing the data that I included as well as intervention specialists, students who do not have data that's included in the Google Sheet form or Google Calendar, and then I'll also be contacting our Director of Student Services to review the data with him as well. Again, on December 20th, this is the end of our second grading period. I'm going to be doing the same thing, looking at the calendar, ensuring that all the students who have been identified thus far are in the calendar as well as the Google Doc form. I'll be doing the same for the third grading period, which ends on March 10th, as well as May 25th, the fourth grading period, when that ends. On June 2nd, I plan to meet with our Director of Student Services to review, analyze, and send the data collected from the project to ODE through EMIS. I'll also be able to compare the data collected from the 16-17 school year and implementing this new project to the previous years and determine the effectiveness of the project. Someone might ask, why to focus on student eye exams? The data reported to ODE through EMIS is currently inaccurate and subjective, at least in my experience. Oftentimes, the data is collected through notes and emails or conversations in the hallway. Data is oftentimes a guess or an opinion rather than an actual representation of students who have received an eye exam and those who have not. As educators, we know that requirements made by ODE often change from year to year or even within the year, as well as the effects of completing requirements and adhering to timelines. Currently, there are no ramifications if the data is inaccurate and there's no district funding tied to the comprehensive eye exam. However, who is to say that this is not going to change in the future? By creating, establishing, and implementing a data collection method for my project, this will allow an accurate representation of the data for both the district and EMIS purposes. Should the guidelines and requirement change, Norton City Schools would already have a valid and reliable data collection process in place. And lastly, I just wanted to share some references that I used from the Ohio Department of Education. And the first one here is just the implementation of required comprehensive eye exams, and that was done from December 31st, 2014. This included information from the 13-14 school year, how districts can be informed of parents. Parents provided the reasons for not following up. District provided suggestions for improvement. That's made available to you. And then lastly, I also included this reference that I used, which is tracking the eye exams required by Senate Bill 316, and this just discussed the changes made to that. If you have any questions, please contact me. Thanks and have a great day.